Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Funhouse. Alongside, as always, Mr. Martin Popoff. What's happening,
Yes.
Martin?
Nothing much. Summer has arrived in Toronto. The Leafs are agonizingly carrying on this debacle of trying to get out of the first round. I don't know. Boston, Satan, it's all the same kind of thing. We have this thing with Boston where we just like horribly lose to them all the time. So I don't know if they can pull this off, but we'll see.
Yeah, everybody's all talking about hockey these days, but it seems like this is a time of year now where there's a bunch of sports that are capturing the public eye because basketball is also going on. Baseball is now like the first month into the season. It's like, well, who's going to pull away from the pack and all that kind of stuff. And both of our teams are like kind of like right there in the middle, not really doing much of anything yet, but still kind of there. You got to deal with the Yankees and the Orioles. Let me tell you, the Orioles are playing some damn good baseball again.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always the Braves and the Phillies. It's like a thorn in my side. So we'll see how it all turns out. So,
yeah, we had a family trip to a Jays game the other day, and
saw
we
that,
saw
yeah.
Otani, right? So that was cool. And he hit a home run. Third pitch, he hit a home run. So at that game, they beat us 12-2, I think. And then Jays happened to pull one of those out, and then I think they've split with Kansas City or something like that recently.
Yeah. Your take on the Mike Trout situation, man? It's like this guy can't catch a break, huh?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen this year. I don't think the Jays are really going to go very far. As usual kind of thing. It's just baseball's. I remember, was it last year, the situation where you were just poured right out about the Mets, right?
Well,
Getting all the way to the end, and
that was the year. That was the year before.
That was the year before. Yeah,
2022. They won 100 and something games. They were in first place all the way up till September, and then they just like petered out, and that was it. And I'm like, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. So last year, they just basically they got all these injuries right off the bat, and they just sucked all year. But yeah, I mean, baseball is such a long season. It's like anything can happen. That's why it's almost like you really shouldn't get too excited about anything till September because any team can play middling 500 mediocre baseball all season long and then wake up in the last 4 weeks, play great and make the playoffs and win the World Series. This is the way it goes. So it's a crazy sport.
And we've got a half decent team this year with the TFC in the MLS. And we got the Olympics coming and all sorts of stuff. So Bills aren't going to do so well this year, apparently, right? They're more or less spent out, and so
I know. And Canelo Alvarez is fighting this weekend, Cinco de Mayo weekend. So there you have it. And even boxing getting into
all right.
So here we go. So we've got a power pack show today. We're revisiting a topic from a couple weeks ago where we took a look at what we deem are four of arguably the biggest American hard rock metal bands of the 70s that were the answer to the British movement. And we Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, and Kiss. We ranked all their 70s albums a couple of weeks ago and threw in all the ancillary associated records. Well, we're moving into the 80s now. We're doing the exact same thing. So we've got 34 albums to get through today. So these are the main albums from the main bands, a couple solo projects, a couple offshoot bands, that sort of thing. So we're going to cram them all in here today. Right, Martin?
I don't know if there's much logic to this situation. I mean, it's literally the carrying forward of the old story. But, now that we're moving to the 80s, you might ask, why aren't we talking about other big American bands or whatever as part of this? But I suppose what we're doing here is we're saying what happened to these big 70s, institutions in the 80s. How did they fare specifically? So I guess there's a narrative here, but our logic can be a little loose sometimes, but this is going to be fun. This was great exercise. So
and in the end, it's just an excuse to talk about some cool albums and maybe not so cool albums, right? Because ultimately that's what we wind up doing. We're ranking all this stuff, and maybe they're not all that associated with each other, but it's just kind of fun to put everything just like in a big pile and just kind of try to assemble it and talk about all of them and which ones kind of suck and which ones are really great, right? So that's kind of what it's all about. All right, so we're doing 7 at a time for the first couple rounds and then 6 to finish it off because we got
7, 7, 7, 6 because there's 34 each. So my first 7, let's kick it off with Peter Criss, Out of Control. My notes here. So yeah, we're talking about all the nooks and crannies of what these guys got up to from these bands, but I'm just looking at my notes here, and I've got things like I won't break it down by song, although I went and excruciatingly played all this stuff again just to see what is going through his mind here. But my notes say things like Maudlin Ballad, Cowbell Kiss, Eagles, terrible singing, Heavy Wings, Demo Journey, terrible production, terrible singing, Elton John / Joe Cocker, Wings, piano, disco, Jimmy Buffett pop, the Pat Benatar song, new wave arrangement, Kiss Rock, thudding drums, piano pop. So there's my out of control. And then Peter Criss comes back again, anchoring the bottom of this list with Let Me Rock You. This is the infamous one where he looks like he's just getting out of the shower on the cover, right? With the, so 1982, my notes say 4 on the Floor, hard pop. 80s pop, shuffly new wave, John Lennon song, 4 on the Floor, Kiss Rock, but with piano, hard rock shuffle, doo-wop, Maudlin 3/4 pop waltz, blue-eyed soul, disco hard rock, boogie Lou Reed rock, but poppy. So yeah, just playing these things. I'm just wondering what is this guy even up to here? Why does he want to make
what records? He was up to though, Martin? And again, neither one of us own it, so we can't show it. But that is apparently that was the first time ever that anybody in Kiss revealed what they actually looked like on an album.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, yeah,
you're right. Very cool. Okay, so my third from the bottom selection here is the Dead Ringer album, Electrocution of the Heart. And so this is Dennis Dunaway, Neil Smith from Alice Cooper Group, Charlie Hune, and Joe Bouchard as part of this thing, right? And essentially what it is it's kind of stiffly recorded, humorless, trying to be a hair metal band, but trying to be stadium rock at the same time. It's kind of heavy, but kind of cheesy and thumping and maudlin and corporate kind of thing. So that's why I've got that fairly low. Let's see. Next, we've got Nugent. So when he just got together with these guys, it's like, oh, let's make a record, and I think they did a terrible job of it. Carmen Appice is on here as well. But as usual, Ted pays no attention to his drummers, and that's changed. There's some amazing drumming on some later albums, but the drums are just like, it's like very toned down and polite. The production's not good. The songs are kind of jokey and melodic and kind of being hard rocky, but he's kind of just goofing around on this album. Never liked it. Next, I've got Kiss Unmasked at my number 30 slot. This is basically a slightly better version than the Peter Criss albums, I suppose, is one way you can look at it. The songs I think are fairly well crafted. I mean, this is one of those situations where once you finish talking about every Kiss album, people go back to these and they start romanticizing these records, right? But yeah, I don't really get a lot of value out of it. Of course, hated it as a kid. Next, I've got Freely's Comet, Second Sighting, which is, great guitar sound. Kind of, well, it's Ace, right? So it's sort of like up tempo hair metal, massive beats. Not really not bad, but you feel a little compromised about the singing, the lyrics. Although there's some help in those departments. But yeah, it's got it is a well put together album, and I guess as a foray for Ace, it's ambitious enough. And then my final one of the first batch is Whitford St. Holmes. I feel like, well, my notes here say things like simple commercial foreigner hard rock. Hold on, offbeat, bad drum sound, bad drumming. I don't feel like the drums are very good on here. I don't feel like the production is very good. There's a lot of 4 on the floor drumming. I've always been a hater of 4 on the floor drumming. 4 on the floor drumming is when, rather than having some semblance of a beat or pattern where the bass drum is on 1 and 3 and the snare is on 2 and 4, its bass is on 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So it's boom, boom, snare, bass hitting at the same time. So that's 4 on the floor drumming, and I always felt that it causes things to be stodgy or clumsy sounding and not very groovy sort of thing. So there's a lot of 4 on the floor on here. Yeah, there's one that sounds like what is it called? Every morning, it sounds like a commercial song from Pat Travers' Hot Shot. Bland Production, and that's another album that has a fair bit of 4 on the floor drumming on it. But yeah, it's just dull, not well put together. There's a lot of debate these days about the Hughes Thrall album. I always considered it sort of the sister album of this because they're both brown, right? And some people really like it, some people don't. But I've always felt that this and the Hughes Thrall kind of went together as not great albums. So that is my first 7.
Okay, cool. All right, my number 34 is also going to be Out of Control.
Okay.
How could this not be the bottom of the barrel, right? Man, his cover of You Better Run is terrible. It's just awful. You know, the fact that that's the only song really that I even want to talk about speaks volumes here. But a lot of really bland pop here. But the funny thing is, I don't even think this is as bad as his like solo album, from the first solo album from when he was still in Kiss.
Right.
I think he's singing pretty good here. There's a couple songs that kind of rock, but most of this is just absolutely forgettable. Absolutely forgettable. So, but I give him at least a little credit for wanting to rock a little bit on some of this, as opposed to that first solo album, which really has none of that. So that's the bottom for me.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm gonna go with next up. May surprise some. Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker from the Joe Perry Project. This is the last one.
Okay.
I don't know. Speaking of, I find this very generic, run of the mill, and I really don't care for this guy, Cowboy Mock Bell's vocals. And I think one of the things that never really sat well with me on Joe Perry Project albums is that every album's got like a different singer. So there was like no continuity, all this stuff. And it's a shame because I think that there's some really, Joe's guitar tone is really nasty on this album. Four Guns West is great. I like a couple songs I kind of like, but I find most of this album pretty forgettable. And like I said, I don't like the vocals at all. So that's that. Number 32. Again, I'm going to upset a lot of people here, but Aerosmith Permanent Vacation.
Wow. Okay.
Don't like the hits. I find most of the deep cuts just bland as all hell. I think Heart's Done Time and Magic Touch are really good. I just wish the rest of the album was like that. I don't like this period in Aerosmith. I don't like any of the hits, just not at all. And I find out of the two latter 80s albums on this list that we're tackling today, this one is by far my least favorite. At least I have some nice things to say about the other ones. So that's number 32. 31, I'm going to go Peter Criss, Let Me Rock You. I mean, you know the big shame about this album, Martin? If you look at the cast of characters that appear on this album, you got guys like Steve Stevens. And
let the record hear that Aerosmith Permanent Vacation is a worse album than Peter Criss's Let Me Rock You.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Well, I'll explain why. Steve Stevens is on here. Steve Lukather's on here. Michael Landau's on here. Bobby Massano's on here. At least about half of this album kind of rocks. Maybe it's not great rock, but Let It Go, I think, is pretty catchy. Move On Over, Destiny, kind of AOR, melodic rock. Some Kind of Hurricane, fairly heavy. Feels Like Heaven, fairly heavy. The rest of it's absolutely garbage. It's terrible. But I don't know. I get a little bit more mileage out of a handful of songs on this album, Martin, than I do on Permanent Vacation. Yes, I've said it. People are going to torch me in the comments for this because I know millions of people bought Permanent Vacation. I never bought into it. So no.
And it's never fair comparing just one thing versus another, right? I mean, we see this in the Rock Hall of Fame stuff, right? It's like, oh, you're putting them in, but not Iron Maiden or whatever, right? Like you know, it's a kind of an argumentative fallacy thing that you're not supposed to do, kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And let's reiterate here. I mean, you know, one's 32, one's 31. So I'm not saying that Peter Criss's album is leagues better than the Aerosmith album. It's like I'm literally splitting hairs between albums that I just don't like here. That's basically what it comes down to. And I'll go on the record right now saying there's a good amount of albums on this list that I just really don't give a shit about, and including this one, Kiss, Hot in the Shade. Yeah, I have found that a lot of the Kiss material from right around this time is kind of fun, but I don't take it all too seriously. Betrayed is pretty good. You got the Forever's on here. Cadillac Dreams, all right. King of Hearts. I don't know. This is Kiss doing that hair metal thing, and it's okay for what it is. But I very rarely reach for this stuff, and so that's why it ranks pretty low for me. Next up, I'm gonna go with the Nugent album. Yeah, I agree with Martin 100%. The great lineup on here, but this is just really mediocre. Really mediocre. The songs aren't all that interesting. They maybe could have been if his guitar tone was beefed up a bit and the drums were, I mean, you got Carmen Apiece on here for crying out loud. I just don't find, the album cover speaks, oh, this is going to be a black, he's wearing the leather, this is going to be a big, heavy album. He's on the back with the Les Paul, but I just don't find this album all that heavy, all that interesting, and it's not greatly produced at all. It's very thin sounding. So that's more of a big disappointment than anything else. Next
That's
up,
it.
that's it.
I think that's your 7. Yeah.
That's my 7. Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Back to you.
Okay, so 27 for me is Freely's Comet. Freely's Comet. I like Rock Soldiers. It's a very memorable song. The lyrics are just ridiculous on it, but it is, that's almost why you like it and why you remember it, because the lyrics are so crazy. Something Moved is really cool on here. We Got Your Rock. I feel like there's almost like a Kick-Axe Vices thing going on with this album. So it's a kind of a cool party album. Breakout's pretty cool too. So yeah, Freely's Comet, the first one from 1987. There you go. Next, I've got Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, the Joe Perry. I do not like Cowboy Mock Bell either from Thunder Train. I remember getting that Thunder Train album, 1977, on a trip, white vinyl, thinking it was going to be really heavy, but it wasn't. The band's got this ridiculous aesthetic kind of to them. There's your dudes in the band, right? Yeah. So it's a whole different band. And the thing about this, it's don't like the singing. It's kind of squalid, Johnny Thunders-ish, druggy sort of funky hard rock. It's trashy. It's weird. It's a little bit of Southern, a little bit of boogie. So it's not very heavy at all. And it just feels, it feels like a squalid drug album, this one. And yeah, there's a label change to MCA as well involved. Pretty cool album cover. It's a good album cover on it. And next I've got Ace Frehley, Trouble Walking. And again, it's not Frehley's Comet this time. He's moving ahead. The lineup's different. It's more of Ace's personality kind of thing. It's a little glammier. So yeah, I'm kind of on board. It's 1989. So we're at the end of our thing here. Next I've got Ted Nugent, If You Can't Lick 'Em, Lick 'Em. Again, here I just find it's almost, it almost reminds me of the Dead Ringer album in a way. Like it's trying to be hard rock, but it's got a very sort of techie drum sound. The drum sound is almost unlistenable on this album, but it's a little of this, a little of that, trying to be hair metal, trying to be heavy. There's some boogie stuff on here. But yeah, it's kind of corporate, kind of commercial. It doesn't feel like Ted's heart is in this whole idea of trying to be a hair metal guy. Next, I'm going with Kiss Crazy Nights. To me, this is the nadir of this whole era. I quite like a lot of this era. This one to me is the Gene Phoning It In album. It's the one where the production's not very good. The song doctory stuff is sort of at an apex. I'm just not I'm not finding that much heaviness, and the production is so dry and boxy and distorted kind of sounding that I'm just not on board. So 1987. Then I go with music from The Elder, 1981. The Be Careful What You Ask For. We get a concept album out of Kiss. It's got some heavy stuff on it. It's got some stuff that really drives me the wrong way. But it's got some sort of precursory sort of things on there that you're going to hear on Creatures of the Night. But yeah, I think it's patchy. It's kind of up and down. Production's good. Bob Ezrin. Next, I've got Blue Oyster Cult Imaginos, which is kind of a dog's breakfast of an album. It's the production's up and down. It's quilted together, patchwork together over the course of basically, I think maybe even starting in 1980. I think some of the things on here, but 82 certainly leading up to 88. It's got all sorts of guest stars on it, guest singers, redoing old songs and not doing them as well, trying to be heavy. The production's not great, different guitarists. It's just kind of a big mess. Although it's cool that we're getting the Imagino story sort of sorted out here. And, I've done 2 whole books on the Imagino story. But yeah, love the album cover, the whole Cliff House thing. And that thing, I just went off on the Cliff House in these books. They're all over these 2 Imaginos books. And then you get the back there with the sailing the ship. Long, complicated story there. That is my next 7.
Cool. And that's one of Jamie Laszlo's favorite Blue Oyster Cult albums.
Okay.
I was a big Imaginos fan. All right. I'm gonna go with If You Can't Lick 'Em, Lick 'Em.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty down on this Nugent doing hair metal period. I have found in recent years. Some of these albums are better than others, but man, when he's surrounded by all those millions of guitars on the back, and then you get this crappy cover, and I find a lot of this album kind of limp wristed. I don't really like the production here. I don't like the direction. And like you said, you wonder if Ted's heart was fully into it, because it doesn't really sound like it. This is not ferocious Ted for me. And yeah. And I say the same thing with, I know you like this one way better than I do, Little Miss Dangerous. I have the same issues with this album and this period. It's just not all that interesting. There's some good guitar solos on here, but it's one of those albums where I find that when I listen to it, I'm just waiting for the guitar solo, and I really don't care about the songs at all. And again, another just pretty shitty album cover. But again, looking at the time this came out, I know why they were going with that. Next up, I'm going to go with Aerosmith Pump. So this is not a bad album. This, out of probably all the latter Aerosmith albums after a certain period, I find this one at least mostly listenable. I think Young Lust is a great rocker. That's like one of my favorite. There you go. Probably one of my favorite songs from them in this time period. Fine is also really good. Monkey on My Back, pretty good rocker there. Don't Get Mad, Get Even. It's got some really good guitar playing on it, good riffs. Hoodoo Voodoo Medicine Man, real high energy, like it. I think Tyler sounds great on this album. But the reason why it's so low, I find a good chunk of the album too poppy, and I just don't like the hits. I don't like any of the Aerosmith hits from this time period at all. You got Outside Writers and just really shooting for the radio and the MTV. And it doesn't really work for me, but some good stuff on here though. Next up, I'm going to go with Kiss Unmasked. Yeah. I mean, I know, like you said, so many people now look back on this album that they hated all those years ago. And it's like, oh, Unmasked, it's actually a classic. I don't really think it is, but Is That You, Naked City, Two Sides of the Coin. The A stuff is pretty good on here. Torpedo Girl is kind of funny. I don't like the production at all. I think that there's no balls to the guitars whatsoever. And you got the couple of really poppy tracks. I don't know. Overall, it doesn't really work for me. And Crazy Nights. Yeah. This to me is like Kiss trying to do a Poison album. It's like this weird kind of party hair metal stuff, and syrupy choruses, and yeah, there's no Gene on this album hardly at all. Hell or High Water is kind of fun. The title track, I guess, is okay. It's really catchy, but overall, this is another one of those Kiss albums that I just kind of like always kind of skim over when I'm looking for a Kiss record from this time period to listen to. And we'll go next with Ted Nugent Penetrator. I find out of this era, this is my favorite out of all of these albums here. I think Tied Up in Love is a really, really good song. And I think on the strength of that, it kind of rides this up. Thunder Thigh is kind of funny. Knocking at Your Door. I find the production a little bit kinder to Ted's guitar playing on this album. He's roaring on this. There's some good riffs, good soloing, and I don't mind the cover all that much. So how many more we got here, Martin?
I think you have 3 more.
3 more. Okay. I've got the Rock and Rolls again, Joe Perry Project. Again, switching singers once again. I don't like this one nearly as much as the debut. I think the debut out of the 3 is by far the best. But East Coast, West Coast, really good song. Listen to the Rock is really good. Buzz Buzz is kind of fun. His guitar sound is pretty dirty on here. Again, Charlie Farron, right? Everybody's kind of singing on this one, but again, it's missing the spark of the early band and the early album, but still not too bad. So That's coming there. And then we're going to go with an album that I've picked on for many, many decades here, Intensities in 10 Cities by Ted Nugent. So the reason why we include this one, folks, yes, it is a live album, but it's a live album of all original material. And at the time, this was kind of a unique thing because most bands didn't do that. They would put out a live album and be like a greatest hits type of thing. Here we get all new songs. I find the songs absolutely ridiculous and juvenile. However, his guitar playing is absolutely ferocious on this album, which is the reason why I didn't rank this lower, because most of these songs are just ridiculous. The Flying Lip Lock, Spontaneous Combustion, My Love is Like a Tire Iron, Jailbait. I mean, all the songs are just absolutely juvenile stuff, but he's killing it on the guitar on this. And I think the production is really raw and just mighty. But yeah, I really can't take it too seriously, but it is what it is. And my last one, I guess.
One more, yeah.
Yep. Music from the Elder by Kiss. So I hated this album when I was younger. I thought it was the biggest mistake they could have ever made. In revisiting it in recent years, kind of like a lot of people, I actually don't think this is as bad as we thought it was back then. A misfire for Kiss for sure, and not probably when the timing that they recorded at in their career didn't do themselves any favors. But going back, like you said, there is some pretty heavy stuff on here. The production is great. Some of it's a little bit too kind of theatrical Broadway type of thing. But I think if you take the good stuff out of here, there's actually some really, really cool songs on here. And I think it's, give them kudos for being ambitious. I mean, that's not really what we wanted from Kiss then or now, but I still think it's not as bad as I remember back in the day. It's actually pretty cool. And you have to wonder, like, now all these years later, maybe 10 years from now, Martin, all of a sudden people are going to be saying this is the ultimate Kiss classic. We just didn't know it. It took us 40 years to realize it, right? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, not awful anymore.
Yeah. Wicked. All right. Okay, so 19, we're in the middle of our ranking here. I'm going with Kiss Hot in the Shade. I actually have a newer appreciation for this now, because when I had to do my Kiss at 50 book, I was going chronologically writing about everything, and I realized that I came to the conclusion that it was a real step up in ambition over Crazy Nights. It's longer, it's more guitar-y. There's a little bit of a theme of them trying to be a little bit more raw and rootsy and garagey, and you do kind of hear it on here. It's still squarely a hair metal album, but they're trying a little harder. It's not as good as Revenge, but yeah, it's literally, I mean, I have it on vinyl here, and it is 89, but it's long enough for the CD age. I think they were already writing for the CD age. So this is actually a lot better than I thought. And I realized it when I had to write these, concise 50 career highlights. Every studio album got a thing in the Kiss at 50. So, doing a good review where I'm going Crazy Nights, let's move on. And wow, what a difference. So I Crazy Nights did not.
Would you agree? You brought up Revenge. Would you agree that Revenge blows out of the water everything between Lick It Up and Revenge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Not even close.
Yeah. Okay. My 18 is Buck Dharma Flat Out. This is one of those, my latest podcast episode is called Albums That Don't Deserve the Love. And it's, and the whole, that title's a little misleading. It's about those albums you really want to love more, and you really try super, super hard to get into them, and you give them the benefit of the doubt and all that. And like, you let them grow on you and all that kind of thing. This album, look all over the place. You're finding a few highlights kind of thing, but it is really cleanly and corporately and politely recorded. It's very poppy. There's some nice things on it, and some great lyrics on here, like Your Loving Heart is amazing, Born to Rock is amazing. Cold Wind is a beautiful ballad on here. So yeah, there are some cool things about it, but yeah, you just kind of wish it was a little heavier, and the production was a little less kind of corporate on it. Another one that went up a little bit in my estimation is Intensities in 10 Cities. So this is my number 17. I went through this album again for this exercise, and I started playing it from the beginning going, oh my God, was I wrong about this the whole time? Because the first side, pretty much, most of the first side, hang on, is it all of the first side? hang on, 5, let's see, where does I Am a Predator shows up on the first side.
Yeah.
So basically the first 4 songs are all, even though there's some ridiculous titles and lyrics, they're all actually really slamming and heavy, and the production and the playing is really good on this album. But the wheels do fall off at track 5, and then the second side is basically, let's see, what do we got here? Fast instrumental, The Flying Lip Lock, Fast Boogie, Stupidity, Land of a Thousand Dances. I always hated that thing. The TNT or Overture, crap instrumental, I Take No Prisoners, cool regular song, all right. So basically, the wheels do fall off even before you get to the end of side 1, and then side 2 is not very good. Maybe one salvageable song. So this is literally almost half a good album, and I did not think that. I did not remember it that way before doing this exercise. Next, I've got Little Miss Dangerous. So I do have a soft spot for the early days of the Ted Nugent hair metal experiment. And I find that the production is quite picking up some of the extreme things from 80s production actually works for Ted and helps to give him a little bit of an identity here. So I think there's a fair bit to like on that album. And then my favorite of this period is Penetrator. And here the production's even more clattery from the drum end of things. It's really hard hitting. And again, it does give him a bit of a personality. So I think this is a good mix of, the reason this is going to work, or the reason it can work, is it's the early days of hair metal before too many, travesties have been committed by the hair metal bands. It's all still fresh, right? It's 1984 for this. So he's diving in pretty early, right? The same way Kiss does. Hair metal's only basically a year old. It's produced by Ashley Howe, who's produced Uriah Heep stuff as well. So yeah, I think he does a good job on this, and he fits this whole mandate pretty okay. Next, I've got Kiss Animalize, which is the second, count it maybe the third even. I think this is a good, exciting album. It's again same theme. It's early into hair metal. It's 1984, so same year as Penetrator. I think Kiss does a good job with navigating these waters. There's fast stuff. There's good melodic stuff. There's some anthemic choruses. I think it's just a good, solid meat and potatoes, stupid Kiss album that we all kind of like. Anyways, next I've got Club Ninja, Blue Oyster Cult. This definitely is one that fits that podcast episode of everybody loves Blue Oyster Cult so much. They might be my favorite band. And we've on the Contrarians done a whole episode, 1 hour, a bunch of guys pulling their hair out, trying to figure out, is this a good album or not, kind of thing. I mean, I think objectively it's just definitely not. But it is Blue Oyster Cult. There's definitely going to be some interesting lyrics because you've got the outside lyric writers and stuff. And there's a couple of classics in here on Dancing in the Ruins, White Flags, even though it's a cover of the Legat album, Legat Brothers, and Perfect Water. So Dancing in the Ruins and Perfect Water are objectively speaking, Blue Oyster Cult classics. People love them. Love both of them. So that is my 13. So that is my next 7.
Okay. All right. My 19, I guess, is Fraley's Comet, Second Sighting. Okay. Second final Fraley's Comet album. I think to me, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think Ace sounds great on here. I like the way his guitar is produced. Big riffs, cool solos. To me, though, this almost sounds more like a Todd Howarth album than an Ace Frehley or Fraley's Comets album. And if you do a little history, read a little history on this album, Ace was going through a lot with substance abuse and things like that, going in and out of rehab at this time. So I think that Todd really kind of took up the mantle here. But and then you got Jamie Oldacker, who's the drummer on this album. His drums aren't as interesting as Anton Fig's, but whatever. I think there's some good songs on here. Dancing with Danger is a good rocker. Insane is another one. Loser in a Fight's got some pretty good riffs. Fallen Angel is really catchy. To me, some of this stuff sounds like, I always thought that Todd, his vocal style and his songwriting style, it's almost like this kind of Tommy Shaw type thing going on. So part of this album sounds like a Fraley's Comet album. Some sound like a Tommy Shaw solo record. but I think it's a pretty good album overall, and it's got a good production to it. So that's number 19. Number 18, I'm going to go with Buck Dharma, flat out. Loads of guests on here. Yeah, Martin totally nails it. This is an album that you're supposed to like a lot more than it probably actually is. Uh, he's got a very distinct writing style and vocal style, and you can kind of tell some of this stuff sounds like songs that could have fit maybe on BOC albums, and some of it completely not. I think the guitar playing is fine on here. I think the production, it's called Flat Out. I think the production is a little on the flat side. It could have used a little more balls to me. His guitar is not all that big and bold in the mix. But, Born to Rock is a terrific anthem. That Summer Night, I like quite a bit. I love Cold Winds. That's awesome. Love the atmosphere of that. And I like the slow build of Your Loving Heart. I think that's a really cool tune. It gets kind of heavy at the end, good guitar solos. But man, a lot of this is just really poppy. And I remember at the time when this came out, most of us were very disappointed because it's not really a big guitar album, not really what we kind of wanted and hoped for him. And it's a shame because the album cover's pretty cool. Yeah. Next up, I'm going to go with Analyze. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a pretty good album. I saw them on this tour. I got to see one of the very few Mark St. John concerts that he played, and you could tell he was kind of struggling. I think he's a pretty talented guy, but unfortunately, we know what happened to him. But yeah, I think I've Had Enough. Into the Fire is a great song. Heaven's on Fire is lots of fun. There's good anthems on here. It's fairly heavy in spots. Lonely as the Hunter is good. Murder in High Heels. Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid record. Only to be bested, I think, ever so slightly by Asylum, which is my next up. So here we've got Bruce Kulick coming in place of Mark St. John. Again, formula is very, very similar here. King of the Mountains, really good. Love's a Deadly Weapon is fun. I'm Alive. Tears Have Fallen, I think, is a terrific kind of like commercial hair metal, glam metal, heavy rock song. I thought the video was really cool. Radar for Love is good on here. Good ballads, good more melodic fare, some good heavy stuff. I think it's pretty strong. Next up, so I feel a little bit. I like this one a little bit more than Martin does. I like the Dead Ringer album, Electrocution of the Heart, at number 15. I think it's kind of heavy, actually. It's and your whole line about being kind of corporate-y. I do agree with that. I mean, this is 1989, right? So it's kind of late to the game for all this stuff. But I think the guitar playing of this guy Jay Johnson is really, really good. It's fairly metallic in spots. Everybody Rock, pretty cranking. You're in Love. It's total cheesy, but I don't mind it. It's catchy. Secret Eyes is a nice kind of like soaring kind of quasi ballad. Balls Out is really sleazy, and Double Talk is pretty good. I don't know. I think it's a pretty fun album. I had never heard this album before we got ready to do this exercise today, so I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this one. But yeah, it's cheesy as all hell. Don't get me wrong. All right, where are we next? Ace Frehley, Trouble Walking from 1989. So again, we had the two Frehley's Comets albums in between, the first Ace Frehley and this one. But I think this one's pretty damn good. It's pretty rocking overall. Shot Full of Rock is a total banger. Five Card Stud is great. The title track is good. Too Young to Die. You got Fractured Part 3 on here. All these songs rock. There's some cool riffs, slashing solos. Yeah, you get a little bit of 80s metal cheese on this one as well, but I think the production is really good. And overall, I think it's one of his better solo records, especially from the early days. I think it's a lot of fun, and it was cool revisiting this one for first time in a while. And next up, I'm going to go with Whitford St. Holmes. So I kind of like this album, but Martin is 100% correct in comparing this to the Hughes Thrall album, because I think both that album and this album probably are a little too safe and could have been better. But I do like the songs on here. I think Derek is singing great. The guitar work is pretty good. I Need Love, Whiskey Woman's good. Every Morning, Spanish Boy, Action, all really good, fun, melodic hard rock fare. Some of it sounds kind of generic, and like I said, it sounds safe. And I have the same issue with the Hughes Thrall album. So you're 100% correct to kind of lump those two together, because I think those are like these superstar collaborations that could have been a lot better. So is that my last one?
Yes. I've got my numbering a little screwed up here. I've got another 7, and this is wrong. So basically 13.
According to my list, my next one will be 12.
Okay. All right.
We may have gotten a little screwed around.
Okay. So, anyways, my next one is Kiss Creatures of the Night. I think they did a really good job with this. It's got a big bottom end. It's got a big bottom end, but yet still it's mid-range. I don't know how they manage that, but it's obviously a big heavy return. I think it's more of a return. They're thinking we got to be heavy again, and they're not really responding to like the new wave of British heavy metal or anything like that. But somehow they're sensing something's going on in metal, and they put out this heavy album. It's got War Machine on it. It's got Creatures of the Night. The title track is amazing. Keep Me Coming's really cool for a Paul one. I Love It Loud's a big anthem on here as well. So yeah, I think this is just a good quality. The other thing is for 82, it's almost like it's predicting or presaging or even inventing the whole hair metal thing somewhat. It's actually getting in there on the ground floor really, really early. So that's really cool. Asylum, I've always had a soft spot for Asylum. I think this is the best produced of all of these in this period. It sounds ambitious to me. It feels it's got a big Paul element to it somehow. I really like things like Who Wants to Be Lonely and Tears Are Falling. So some of the more melodic things on here I like. I think they do a good job with King of the Mountain. Any way you slice, it's a good Gene one. So yeah, this one I always had a soft spot for. I think it might be my favorite of well, it's they're pretty close, but definitely I've got Hot in the Shade and Crazy Nights, well below this one, but this is close.
What do you think of that album cover?
Yeah, terrible album cover. We featured this on one of our Contrarians album cover shows as what was the show called? They Never Looked Worse. I think it was, when you got band shots that you don't really like, but the whole pastel 80s thing, and then it's even carried forward on the back. Next, I've got Kiss Lick It Up, which again, in there on the ground floor, I think they do a really good job. The title track is just this beautiful example of simple songwriting that completely, totally works. So yeah, we were excited about it at the time. It just seemed to be like they were diving in, 8 feet first with the whole hair metal thing, and they were doing a really good job of it. It had a little bit of the old Kiss, a little bit of the the new realities of the 80s. So I think that was an exciting record. Next, I've got Blue Oyster Cult Revolution by Night. So we've got this one next. And so this is basically your much better version of Club Ninja in a way. It's produced very 80s. To me, I've always argued that this sounds like, it's an 83 album. To me, it sounds like an 81 or an 82 commercial rock album. There's kind of a Sammy Hagar feel to it, a Night Ranger feel to it a little bit. But it's got, in terms of rockers, basically it's just Take Me Away. I don't really consider Shadow of California much of a rocker, but I like that Shadow of California is part of the Imagino story. There's some good ballads on here too. Patti Smith gets in on the writing. It's got some kind of like scary cool stories like Veins and Dragon Lady on here. Feel the Thunder's pretty good too. So it's pretty salvageable. It's an early Bruce Fairbairn, right? Yeah. But yeah, to me, it really is. I feel like I'm pairing it more with Club Ninja these days, and it just feels like a much more creditable, substantial version of Club Ninja. Next, I've got Aerosmith, Done with Mirrors. So here we've got an album that basically they decided to be pretty meat and potatoes and rockin' and raw with it, but I find it's a little bit kind of brown and gray and boogie rockin' and garage rockin', and I don't feel the songs are particularly there. Even though it's the comeback album on the new label with Geffen, they kind of pooch it and it doesn't do very good out there in the marketplace. So yeah, the songs are just not very good. Evidenced, it uses a metaphor, whatever you want to call it, of their stodgier version of picking up the Joe Perry song "Let the Music Do the Talking." They do a worse version of it on here. And again, I believe it's mainly worse because I feel like it's 4 on the floor drumming on that song that they do there. So that's part of the problem there. And then I've got Permanent Vacation. So this is our big reveal, I guess. If you want to look at polar opposites here. So I was on board with this album when it came out. I absolutely loathe. I cannot stand Angel and everything it stands for, and the whole song doctor thing about it. But you say you don't like the hits. I think Dude is a brilliantly written song, well put together. So I was on board with that as a hit. I totally agree with you that Hearts Done Time is probably the best song on it, and Magic Touch. They're both fairly heavy. But I think there's, and even Ragdoll, I think, is a well put together song. So when it comes to the three massive hits on here, right? I'm buying into two of them and absolutely hating the third one. And I think Permanent Vacation is an absolutely amazing song on here. They offer a lot of value on this album with a lot of bells and whistles and little cool little noises and weirdness. You got an instrumental, you got a Beatles cover. They keep the Beatles cover short, and it's pretty cool. They got a total blues kind of thing with St. John and even Hangman Jury. I just feel like even Girl Keeps Coming Apart is just, it's just interesting. It's just a well put together, interesting, weird album with a lot of action. It's an action packed album of a lot of different kinds of songwriting. It is corporate. You're really feeling like they're really participating in that corporate world with the outside songwriters and stuff. But there's so much going on here. It's basically, yeah, it's 12 songs, and all of them kind of ambitious in their own ways. Simmerai is pretty cool too. So I was buying in. And
So
I
you heard it here first, folks. I think for the first time ever on Friday morning at the Funhouse, I don't like the bluesier tunes on the album, on an album, and Martin does. It's never happened
exactly, yeah,
before.
yeah, funny, yeah. But I do remember definitely already going into this record not being a big fan of Done with Mirrors. So I liked that they seemed to be working harder, kind of thing. Next I've got Aerosmith Pump. So yeah, like I say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is 7. So this is number 7, Aerosmith Pump. What I liked about this album is it definitely felt even a little heavier and a little more raw than Permanent Vacation, and I just liked it first starting off just for that reason. Young Lust is so thrashy and trashy and cymbals everywhere, and Steven Tyler screaming his head off kind of thing. But again, I'm buying into the idea of that abstract platonic ideal of great songwriting, right? So when you're getting the Aerosmith singles at this point, I'm feeling like somebody has really thought about this and put together a good song. And I think Love in an Elevator is a really good song. I even think Janie's Got a Gun is a good song as a ballad. But it's got some good heavy stuff on here as well. The Other Side is cool. Don't Get Mad, Get Even is cool. Fine is heavy. Monkey on My Back is heavy. So yeah, Voodoo Medicine Man. It just feels like it is a rockier, a little more bad boy version of the same corporate Aerosmith that you get on Permanent Vacation. But and most Aerosmith fans are pretty on board with this album. There's two types of later era Aerosmith fans. There's the ones that dismiss almost everything and a lot of what they don't stand for, and I'm kind of in that camp. And then but a lot of them will turn right off after Rock in a Hard Place on the entire rest of it. But I'm hanging on through the 80s kind of thing. I'm still on board, and even though the first of the 90s albums, it feels like it's got the same cool things about here. I'm now not championing the band. I'm not on board. I'm not wishing well to them, right? I'm still wishing well at this point, and buying into the whole sensation of Aerosmith's big comeback. So that is the last of my third bank of 7 with 6 to go. There you go.
It's always interesting to talk to like younger people who grew up with those late 80s and 90s Aerosmith albums and never heard the earlier ones until way later,
Yeah.
and how much they treasure and cherish those and don't hold the early ones up in high esteem like we all do because we grew up with those earlier ones. It's always interesting when you have a band that had such a late career renaissance like Aerosmith and see differing opinions based on how old you are and whatnot, and how much you your opinions on these albums and how it drags. Because you're right, so many old school Aerosmith fans, right after a certain point, they refuse to listen to anything afterwards. And younger people like, yeah, those early albums aren't so great. These newer one, the later ones is where it's
Yeah.
at for them, right? So
One point I'd like to make is that I admire how they didn't write stupid maudlin hair metal rock songs. They went all the way. It's almost like they stuck all the hair metal offense into the big Diane Warren ballads, right? So it's like everything egregious we're going to do to participate in this thing, we're going to pour into the ballads, but the rest of it, we're still going to try to be ambitious with writing interesting, you know, postmodern Rolling Stones, funky, interesting, weird guitar sounds, odd arrangements, a lot of riffs, just a lot of construction going into the hard rock songs. So they just seem way a cut above Poison and Cinderella and Bon Jovi songs, those songs that they're doing.
all right, number 12 for me is the Fraley's Comet debut from 1987.
Okay.
Again, Todd, Anton Fig, John Regan on bass, local guy who just passed away fairly recently. I always dug this. I saw them on this tour, bought this when it first came out. I still think Rock Soldiers is a pretty cool kind of mid-tempo atmospheric rock song with some cool guitar work. Breakout's great. Something Move, We Got Your Rock, Love Me Right, Fractured 2, all pretty strong. And I've been pretty hard on Ace in recent years because I think his vocals in more recent times just not cutting the mustard for me at all. And I like how back in this time period he had Todd on board. The two of them would sing lead, and it works well to not have Ace sing on an entire album. I kind of wish he would do more of that these days, but I think Todd's got a really great voice. So I really like this. I think it's a really strong album. My number 11 is going to be Aerosmith, Done with Mirrors. I think the energy is here. I think the intent is here. I got Ted Templeman producing. I think they expected that he was going to help revive them, and this was kind of a disappointment album. But I think My Fist Your Face is a really good song. I think it was interesting to hear them redo Let the Music Do the Talking. I agree with it. It's not as good as the Joe Perry version, but it's okay. Gypsy's Boots is okay. I think there's some decent stuff on here, but they're still kind of like finding their way back together after being apart for a few years. But not a bad album, I don't think. Next, I'm going to go with Club Ninja. Again, another one of those albums that back in the day, a lot of us shit on because it was a mellow album. And where's the heavier Blue Oyster Cult? And we're kind of like off the Blue Oyster Cult train at this point. But going back and revisiting this over the last like 20 years or so, Dancing in the Ruins, Perfect Water, Make Rock Not War, great songs. Really, really great songs. And Perfect Water is a BOC classic, 100%. And their cover of White Flags is terrific. This is actually a really good album. And I think one of the misunderstood Blue Oyster Cult albums, and a pretty interesting cover. The logo is kind of weird, but yeah, definitely not bad at all. Same thing with The Revolution by Night, which is my next step. Again, kind of poppy BOC, but there's some great songs on here. Shooting Shark is another classic. Absolutely. I like Take Me Away. Totally. The rest of it is kind of mellow, kind of poppy and very melodic, and the production's really crystal clear and clean and maybe a little bit too much shine and squeaky clean, but it's a good kind of sing-along poppy BOC record. Again, doesn't rock enough nearly for me, but I appreciate the songwriting. I think there's some really good stuff on there. Next up, Let the Music Do the Talking by Joe Perry Project. Yeah, this is good, raunchy stuff. I like the singer on this album. I like the guitar playing. The songs are good. They're energetic. They're raw. They're rocking. Title track is great. Discount Dog, Shooting Star, Conflict of Interest, all really strong. Life at a Glance, Rockin' Train, just good, raunchy Joe Perry. Proven that at the time, for this album anyway, it's almost like he didn't need Aerosmith. He can go off and create similar type music on his own, and he did it really, really well here. Next up, Imaginos. Yeah, this is like a weird hodgepodge of ideas and things, and none of the songs sound really similar from a production standpoint. And you got all these people playing on it and singing on it. Sometimes I put this on and I'm kind of like, just doesn't sound like a Blue Oyster Cult record, but the songs are good. There's some pretty heavy stuff on here. The siege and the whole Frankenstein thing is, I love monsters and all that. So that's very cool. You got, a weird redoing of astronomy, and I Am the One You Warn Me Of is heavy. And yeah, this is like one of those weird mystery albums where it's just you listen to it and it sounds like a Frankenstein creation, right? Put all these things together and boom, here's this dark and bizarre album, and it, oddly enough, kind of works. So yeah, that's my number 7. That's it for me, right? Yeah. So
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we got our numbers a little screwed up. I think you might have 7 left, so I think you might want to do one more.
that was
Oh,
my number 7. I got 6
oh,
left. Yeah, I think
oh,
we
okay,
righted the
all right.
ship. I know we
Yes,
got thrown off early on, but I think we've righted the ship since. I
something's
think we're
yeah,
good.
okay, all right. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I have 6 left. So
Yeah.
my next one is I've got the Rock and Rolls Again. This actually went a little up in my estimation. I've spent my life thinking I love the first side, I don't like the second side, but I played it again, and it's got some good heavy stuff at the beginning. East Coast, West Coast, as you say, is amazing. I've got the Rock and Rolls Again. The title track is really cool. So is Soldier of Fortune. But and I really think this album sounds like this great photo shoot here of the guys. Because to me this is a really rambunctious rockin'. It's again a little Johnny Thunders, but it's actually a little heavier and a little more energetic than the third one. So when I play the second side, I'm now just kind of buying into more of that trashy barroom feel that it's got. I think there's some really cool songs on here. Play the Game is a good moody one. South Station Blues is good too. So yeah, this one, if you think of it as a kind of like a heavy outlaw Johnny Thunders Rolling Stones album, I think that's a good framing for it. So and I've always liked the integrity of it, but it was always one of those albums where I thought I wish I liked this more, and now I think I do like it quite a bit more because I've got it number 6 out of 34 albums here. So
Yeah.
oh yeah, I did have Lick It Up handy. So there's my Lick It Up with all the passes stuck in it. Let's see. So my next one is Ted Nugent's Scream Dream. Always have time for this album. I think this is a really cool. I like the production on it. It's still got the classic super behaved Ted Nugent drumming, but it's got some amazing heavy good songs on it, like Scream Dream and Flesh and Blood. It can be a little comedic at times as well, but people always find it a little weird. I mean, they always go to the classics, either Free for All or Cat Scratch Fever, the debut. My favorite two Teds, barring that whole debate about how much I love Love Grenade and Crave Man, my favorite two Teds are State of Shock and Scream Dream. I just feel like the songs are really good. It's kind of like, it's a cheer me up sort of album. It's got kind of a party atmosphere to it, but it's got some heavy stuff as well. And I really like the production of it. Next I've got, so up to number 4, Aerosmith Rock in a Hard Place. Always had time for this album. I think this is an amazing Aerosmith album, even though you've got 2 sub-in guitarists, right? But I really love the production on it. It's just good quality 70s production, got great heavy songs. Our band in the 80s, Torque, we played Lightning Strikes, but I love Jailbreak as well. And Bolivian Ragamuffin, and I would say Rock in a Hard Place and Jig Is Up all have that funky, cool, funky hard rock Aerosmith vibes. You've got that anchoring there as well. And then Joni's Butterfly is an absolute masterpiece. It's like this melodic, cool Rolling Stones kind of song. I'd say it's the best song on the album, even though it's not nearly the heaviest. The heaviest is definitely Jailbait. But yeah, I just think this is just a well put together Aerosmith album, a fine follow up to Night in the Ruts. Next, I've got Joe Perry Project, Let the Music Do the Talking. So number 3 out of 34. I love this album to death. I think it's amazing. Great production. Just let the music do the talking. The title track just soars. It's just got this beautiful drum and bass groove to it. Just absolutely a powerhouse. The Ralph Mormon vocals on this album are really good. The super heavy songs on here, Shooting Star, Conflict of Interest, and the title track, and The Mist is Rising, heavy doomy sort of song. And then the rest is all pretty heavy, kind of funky, it gets a little funky at times, a little Aerosmithy. But things like Rock and Train, Life at a Glance, point both backwards and point to I've Got the Rock and Rolls Again. But I think it is a masterpiece. I think it's just a great, beautiful, well put together. Absolutely, it just sounds like Night in the Ruts. Basically, it's just a really cool Aerosmith album. So that is my number 3. My number 2 is Blue Oyster Cult, Cultosaurus Erectus, 1980. The first of the 2 Martin Birch albums. This is them getting kind of heavier and scarier again after Mirrors. It's got my second favorite Blue Oyster Cult song of all time on it, in Black Blade. Monsters is amazing on here. I cannot stand Divine Wind. It's just a dull blues to me. I hate Marshall Plan as well. But the entire rest of the album, I'm totally on board with. I love Hungry Boys and Lips in the Hill, are both pretty heavy. Unknown Tongue is probably the second best song on here after Black Blade. It's all this weird sort of David Roeder Catholic girl stuff going on in that one. Deadline's cool as well, just spooky and obscure. So yeah, this is just a really obscure, uneasy, off-putting psychological masterpiece from Blue Oyster Cult. And then number 1, my top of all of these bands of the 80s is Fire of Unknown Origin. This is the second Martin Birch album. I just love the production on it. I love it's kind of like modern. Alan Lanier's doing a lot of synthesizer on it. It's got all sorts of great songs. A deep track that I've got a lot of time for in recent years is After Dark. I really love that one. A veteran of the Psychic Wars is amazing. Joan Crawford, Burning for You. It's just chock full of great hits, all going in kind of different directions, or not great hits, like not a ton of hits, but Joan Crawford, Burning for You were. My least favorite song is the heaviest song on it, Heavy Metal, Black and Silver. Just something about that song rubs me the wrong way, but the whole rest of the album is just a laugh riot. It's just a lot of fun, a lot of sound effects and cool stories they're telling. Soul Survivor as well. Just action packed start to finish. I just got a lot of time for it. So that's my number 1.
Cool. Boy, our top of the line is very similar here.
Very close. Okay.
Yes. Number 6 is Rockin' a Hard Place. Yep. I'm sure there's a lot of cocaine happening at this time, Martin. Right? Sounds like that kind of album, but you know what? You know what they say? Cocaine and Aerosmith made for good music, right? Yeah, Jailbait, Lightning Strikes, Bitches Brew, some Prelude to Joan. I mean, everything on here is really good. This is just a good, cranking, raunchy album. It just sounds sleazy and just, yeah. Honestly, I remember when I first got this album, I was kind of like, did I miss the original guys? Not really. It would have been cool that they played on here, but you close your eyes, you don't really miss them all that much. Really good songs, just a good cranking album from this time period. Next up, I'm going to go with Lick It Up. Again, another kind of after Creatures of the Night. I think this kind of continues along that path. It's still pretty heavy, but the hair metal stuff is kind of creeping in a little bit. So here you got Vinnie Vincent officially on board. Now he co-writes a lot of the stuff here. I mean, Exciter is great. Love the title track. Young and Wasted is heavy. All Hell's Breaking Loose. Just some good stuff on here. Fits like a glove. Good, catchy, melodic, metal, rock, whatever the hell you want to call it. Just really good album that I think has aged very well. That's number 5. Number 4 is Scream Dream. Everything you said. His guitar playing is just wicked on this. And I think, yeah, you got some jokey stuff on here, like Wango Tango, but it's fun. The title track is great. Hard as Nails is just terrific. Spit It Out, Flesh and Blood. When it comes to Nugent, I like when he's got another guy in the band that can sing lead vocals along with his. I tend to favor the albums where it's a mix of him and another guy as opposed to all Ted. And I think Charlie sounds great on this album, and it's nice to have that kind of like yin and yang with the vocal style because Ted for me, I like when he sings, but I don't like him as the main vocalist. That's just I've always said that. But yeah, this is a really good, exciting album. Big, ferocious production. Really, really good stuff.
The funny thing that's the album that I noticed at one point, and I did a little Facebook post on it. But there's either 4 or 5 Whitesnake song titles on that album.
Yeah.
Spit It Out, Flesh and Blood. What
Come
else?
and Get It.
Come and Get It. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Go figure. I'm sure if we really search, Martin, we'd find lots of other bands that have sung had songs with those titles. Yeah, it's pretty common, I guess. Number 3 is Creatures of the Night. Yeah, I love this album. This is again pretty heavy, a little darker album. Title track is amazing. Saint and Sinner, Rock and Roll Hell, Love It Loud, War Machine is just absolutely terrific. I wish they did more albums like this in the 80s, but as a good return to playing darker, heavier stuff, I think this is absolutely terrific. And then, yeah, I'm going to echo Martin 100%. Cultosaurus Erectus, number 2. Everything he said. Cool Martin Birch production, a little drier than the one that comes after it, but some absolute classic songs on here. Black Blade is, I agree with you, one of the best songs they ever did. I love Deadline. I love Monster. I like everything on here, actually. Even the ones you don't like, I think are really good. There's a nice mix of flavors on here, but it's all pretty rocking, very intelligent stuff. And I absolutely love the album cover. But number 1 has got to be Fire of Unknown Origin. I think there are just songs on this album that are top shelf. It's like I may like Cultosaurus Erectus start to finish a little bit more as far from a consistency basis than this album, but this album has, Burning for You, Veterans of the Psychic Wars, Joan Crawford, Fire of Unknown Origin, all top shelf stuff. Vengeance is just absolutely terrific. Don't Turn Your Back and After Dark are my least favorite songs on here, but I still do like them. And I like heavy metal, and Soul Survivor is just immense. And I love the production of this album, love the album cover, love the whole vibe of it. It's just, to me, these two are amazing BOC albums, and it's just kind of cool that they did them at a little bit later stage in their career after all those really strong 70s albums to come back with stuff like this. But they're kind of nestled in between like some poppier stuff on either side in the catalog, which is really kind of interesting. But yeah, we duplicate on the top 2.
It's interesting. It's like your intellect tells you you're supposed to like Cultosaurus Erectus more, but it's like a little bit of your heart tells you, or it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure to go with the next one because it's a little flashier, a little bit, trying to please, I suppose.
The highs are higher for me. I think if I were to look at all of the track listings side by side, like I'll say on Cultosaurus, it's like, well, every single one of them I love, right? Or I like a lot. But then there's, 5 or 6 on Fire that I probably like better than anything on Cultosaurus. It's that sort of thing. The highs outweigh.
You're right. Yeah. It's funny. It's like, I say, like, and I totally believe this. Black Blade is the second greatest song they ever did, right? But I think I like Burning for You and Joan Crawford more.
Right, that's the whole thing. Or Veteran of the Psychic Wars. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that thing for me. Like when you're listening to Black Blade, you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then you put on Fire of Unknown Origin, you're like, and you go through each song, you're like, man, I love this song. It's They have that kind of catalog, actually. That's one of the things I like about Blue Oyster Cult is that they have songs that kind of grab you like that. And you could at any day, because I do this all the time. At any day, I could pick like 5 Blue Oyster Cult songs that I'll say are my favorite 5 Blue Oyster Cult songs of all time. And then like a week later, I'll be like, I won't pick any of those, and I'll pick another bunch. So it's very cool catalog, really, really cool band.
You know what's also interesting? You accentuate the oyster, and you go Blue Oyster Cult, and I always go Blue Oyster Cult.
You do. Blue Oyster Cult. Weird, eh? I just did it. I don't even realize I'm doing it. Blue Oyster Cult. I do.
Yeah.
Interesting. Blue Oyster Cult.
You're like a blue what cult, and I'm like a Blue Oyster what?
I mean, how many other bands have like 3 words like that, right? That you can think of off the top of your head.
I bet if we went through the shows, we would find there's a few other ones where we accentuate a different either syllable or word in like that.
So how do you say it? So say Joe's band.
Joe's band?
Joe Perry. Joe Perry Project.
Oh, Joe Perry Project. Joe Perry Project.
Joe Perry Project. I do the same thing. So me, I'm accentuating the middle word. Joe Perry Project.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny. we've got Peter Jones as part of the Contrarians, and nobody's ever said this to him yet. And so I'm saying it here live, but it cracks us. I'm sure it cracks all of us up every time. Not Peter Jones, sorry, Peter Kerr. Peter Jones is on our brain because he actually just said he's not going to do any more shows. It's kind of interesting. He put out a big Facebook post. But Peter Kerr from Australia, right? Debut album. Every single time. That's how he says it. Debut, right? And then the other one he said, am I forgetting? Oh, yeah. No, I'm not forgetting. Discography. Every single time. 50 times in a row. Discography. That's how he says it. It's not a mistake, right? And I'm sure all of us, like, our ears pick up and go, just like everybody makes fun of me for saying boogie, right? But yeah, discography and debut. That's how he says it. So pretty wild.
I mean, there's a lot of people that do that. I mean, I know, like, and Scott, I know you're probably watching, but like Scott Berry, who appears on a lot of shows on SOT, he says melodic and not melodic.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And he's a guy from the States, right? He's from Texas. And and for as long as I've been working with him on the channel, that's the way he says it. Every time he says it, I perk up and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever met anybody else who says it like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And Reed Little on our Contrarians, like, he knows his Black Sabbath. I know he's a very smart music guy, but every single time he gets to the guitarist, it's Iomi.
Iomi. I've never heard that before.
No, I know. Me neither.
Yeah. Even though he's probably heard people pronounce it the correct way his whole life, but still says it the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
Funny. Cool. Right. Well, you know what? I noticed that you had a lot of Kiss albums higher than me, I think, and Ace albums higher than me. So you're definitely, it seems like you're a bigger Kiss fan than I am.
Well,
I might be a bigger Aerosmith fan, sounds like, too.
Yeah, but that's all relative, Martin, because even though I may have ranked them a little higher than you, I don't think, other than like Lick It Up and Creatures, well, I mean, I like Asylum and Animalized, but like, a lot of the others, they maybe are ranked a little higher. It's because I don't like, I mean, because, I'm looking at my list here right now, there's a good chunk of these Nugent albums I had pretty low. And some of the Kiss stuff. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. The top of our list though was fairly similar. Yeah. Like we, obviously Let the Music Do the Talking. We both think pretty highly of. Yeah. Rock in a Hard Place. Yeah. Scream Dream, the BOC albums. So yeah, I don't think we were that far off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely don't like Permanent Vacation as much as you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, what's going on your end? Books and podcast.
We had our album cover show on Wednesday as usual. I had my last episode, like I say, of History in 5 Songs, the audio podcast, go up with albums that don't deserve the love. But like I say, it's more about albums and band situations you really wish were better, but they aren't, kind of thing. And you buy into the whole concept, but then the album comes out and you're like, I don't really like this, but I should. And then books wise, the big ones recently are the what are they? Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin, a visual biography, the Thin Lizzy panel book, the Robert Plant panel book, and the Van Halen at 50. Those are the ones I've been packing up a lot of. So I have supply of all that, all at martinpopoff.com. Sign them, ship them out.
Cool. I'm a week late reviewing the Thin Lizzy, but I'll definitely have my review up next Wednesday. Thank you for sending the Van Halen. I've got that as well. So hopefully I'll get a review of that going up fairly soon as well. So for folks who are waiting for me to do show and tell, that's coming up, and you'll want to place your order soon because I know those books go pretty quickly over there. So yeah, what do we do? We return to thrash next week, I believe, right?
I think so. We'll discuss. Maybe we've got something else. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, cool. What do we got coming up here? Ken Golden and the Professor's Picks coming up in just a couple hours. We've got 4 Fusion Friday tonight. Talking about 4 very, very cool guitar-oriented jazz fusion albums. So join us on 4 Fusion Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got the UK connection tomorrow. Simon and Steven and I are going to each be talking about 5 bands that we can't stand, but we probably should like, right? So that's coming up tomorrow. Do not miss that show. Some people are going to be very upset with us, I think, but it's the nature of the beast. And then on Sunday, Grant, Arthur, and I will be ranking the albums of the very cool late 70s hard rock band Roadmaster. So probably some of you are like, I never heard Roadmaster. Up until about 6 months ago, I never heard of them either. But man, four really, really strong albums that came out later in the decade for folks who like Angel and early REO Speedwagon and maybe, I don't know, bands like that. Kind of keyboardy, kind of proggy in spots, anthemic choruses and things like that. Very, very cool band. So tune in.
And it blows my mind that I actually saw them live in Poughkeepsie, backing up Oyster Cult. All right.
Did you really? Wow. Wow.
Them and the Lisa Hart band were
Oh my
the
God.
supports on that show.
Wow. That's pretty neat. Yeah, I honestly, Martin, I never heard of Roadmaster ever. And then one day I was on YouTube, and you know how you're watching videos on YouTube, and they give you, if you watch this, you might like this. And I'm like, oh, Roadmaster, and it said like the name of the title of the album, and it said like 1977 or something like that. So I clicked on it, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty good. And I went investigating, and I listened to some more, and I'm like, this is really good. So I went out and got all the stuff that was available on CD, and I've been totally digging it. And then I was talking to Grant one day, and I'm like, you ever hear this band? And he's like, no. And so he started listening. He's like, this is great. You want to rank the catalog? I'm like, yes, let's do it. So here we have it. So
Nice.
tune in Sunday. So also coming up this weekend, we'll have a fun show, putting together a cool crew. Once again, speaking of Grant and Scott Lade and Brendan Snyder and myself will be talking about 4 US bands that kind of teetered on the edge of progressive rock and melodic rock and hard rock as well. Kansas, Styx, Ambrosia, and one more, and we'll be talking about them on over the weekend. Are they really prog, or are they something else? That's kind of what we're talking about this weekend. So join us for that as well, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also coming up on Tuesday in the Prog Seat, album study day, Pink Floyd's The Wall. Tune in for that fun show. So till then, head on over to martinpopoff.com, get yourself some books, and we'll see you next Friday here at the Funhouse. For Martin, I am Pete. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.